Hi there movers, today for Magical March I'm going to be talking about something that's magical to me, which is the Moses story. For those of you who don't know who Moses is, he is a prophet, which means he gets revelation from God or Heavenly Father as I will refer to him. Yeah, just a generally important guy. I'm going to be basing this video off the film The Prince of Egypt. If you haven't watched it, then it is a great film, even for atheists. As gospel, whatever floats your boat. It's a great film, definitely recommended. So background information: evil Pharaoh wanted to kill the firstborns. Moses' mum was amazing, sent him because he was the firstborn down a river in a basket. He ended up in the evil Pharaoh's house, who took care of him, and the Pharaoh died. His older brother, then became Pharaoh. He's then started the whole slavery thing again, and Moses didn't like it because those were his people. That's where he came from. So Moses was in fact 40 when he fled Egypt, having slayed one of the slave drivers. It would have taken him, not including sleep, about 2.8 months to flee from Egypt. Including sleep and breaks to eat and drink, it would have taken him around 6 months. Sorry, I have notes here. I don't just have this memorised, so I will be looking down quite a lot. He stayed in the Midian for another 40 years whilst he got married and had 2 sons. So that means he was 80 when he saw the burning bush. Now the burning bush, for those of you who don't know, was a revelation given by God to Moses to say, look, you're a prophet, please save my people. And he showed Moses by a burning bush which constantly stayed on fire, and the fire wasn't hot so Moses could touch it and not get harmed, which is pretty cool and magical. He then took the 6-month trip back when he was 80 with his wife to Egypt to beg for his people back. A lot of non-Mormon or non-Christian or whatever you want to be called people do not know that Moses had a very bad stutter. He did not like talking in front of people, and when he did, he wasn't very good. And so it took a lot of guts and faith to speak in front of Pharaoh and all of those people, and God gave him the power to speak clearly, which was nice. He then asked Pharaoh to let his people go, and Pharaoh obviously said no. So Moses gave his staff to his brother Aaron. He wasn't feeling so confident about all of this stuff, and using the power of Heavenly Father, held the staff up and turned the Egyptians' only source of water into blood for 7 days. So a lot of people died, a lot of fish died, and anyone without a source of water that was from the Nile, obviously they died because they didn't have any water for 7 days. The Egyptians were then forced to dig gigantic wells to get water instead of going to the easy version, which was the Nile. And Moses asked again, let my people go. Again. And he said no a couple of times, again and again and again. And every time he said no, God sent down plagues and diseases, and, for example, frogs, lice, hornets, plagues that killed cattle and brought boils to their skin, hail, which was made with water and fire, which isn't a nice combination, locusts, which ate all of their crops, and 3 days of complete and utter darkness. So those were all over, a couple of months, which was, obviously a not nice ordeal for the Pharaoh and his people. But Moses' people were fine. They weren't affected because God obviously wanted them saved, so he couldn't kill them off. So he affected the people that Pharaoh cared about, so Pharaoh would then say, okay, let my people go. But he didn't. He didn't let them go after all of this. And then Pharaoh saw that none of it was happening to Moses' people, just to the Egyptians. And he got really annoyed. And so Heavenly Father had enough by this point. said that he would kill the firstborn of all of the families, and this includes animal families as well, so sheep, cows, pigs, dead, unless they got the blood of a lamb and painted it on their doors, then they were safe. And this they like to call the angel of death. And there was not one Egyptian family who didn't suffer one death. None of them believed Moses. Moses obviously went out of his way to say to everyone, look, this is what's going to happen, you need to do this, this and this. And still they didn't do anything. Pharaoh didn't do anything either. If they didn't lose a human child, they lost cattle, they lost sheep, they lost anything that they held dear to them, but just the firstborn. So Pharaoh by this point had a son, and it was his only son, so he lost his only son. And by this point Pharaoh quite literally pushed Moses out, and said, take your people, get out, because I don't want to see you anymore. And they travelled, Moses and his people travelled 2 weeks, protected by day with a cloud, a really dark cloud, and by night a pillar of fire. And they came to a stop at the Red Sea, by which time Pharaoh had decided it would be a really good idea to get all of his guards and go and kill them. Which obviously wasn't a good idea because Moses had Heavenly Father on his side, and God against man doesn't really work. So Moses needed to get across the Red Sea, which is not a mean feat. They didn't have any boats, they didn't have anything to get across. God said, stretch forth your hand and I'll send a really strong wind to lift up the sea and you can go right on through. So Moses, the 80-year-old, probably 82 by this point, stood there all night with his hands stretched, with this massive wind like blowing up behind him, all night like this, with the wind behind him and this massive amount of water being lifted up in front of him. It must have been terrifying, especially when you're exhausted from just standing there for 12 hours. Not very nice. And he had the added stress of thousands upon thousands of guards and his evil brother chasing him with every intention of killing each and every one of him and his people. So how he did that, I have no idea. So then the mass of a very estimated 2.5 million Israelites crossed the Red Sea, which is no mean feat, especially when there are chariots of angry men coming after them. This would have taken, highly estimated again, 29 days to get all of them across, because there were women, children, old decrepit people, men, all of them had to get across. 29 days to just get across the sea. And then after they got across, luckily Pharaoh and his people were still there, and Moses was able to let the sea go, and it killed them all, which got rid of them. So at least they weren't getting chased by chariots for ages. So they get there in the end, they're in the clear. Now all they have to do is get to the Promised Land, right? Promised Land is very important to anyone in that day. It was a land rumoured to be filled with milk and just, it was like paradise for them. So they wanted to get to the Promised Lands where they could be free and happy. But this took 40 years to get to the Promised Land. And once they got to the Promised Land, Moses died at the ripe old age of 120. So there you go. There's the truth about Moses, which has always haggled me, because although knowing the basic story is amazing, and watching The Prince of Egypt is great, It's nice to know the little details, and it's interesting to know the little details. So I hope you liked this video of Magical March. Next week we're going to be talking, well, I'm going to be talking about one of my favourite animals, which are dragons, so that would be nice. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more videos and all that jazz, you know what to do, and you'll see me next week. Bye!